where we are in our relationship with God. But not only on an individual level, but also collectively as a parish. And if we're not prepared to do this, then seasons can come and go, but not a lot can result from it. So God is offering us a gift. God is offering us a grace, but it's up to us then to say, thank you, I appreciate that, I'm going to run with that. So we've been on this journey of divine renovation now for just over 2 years. The Pastoral Council together have been reading the book by Father James Mallon since January or February, I think, of 2021. But as a parish, we've been on this journey since September of 2022. So just over 2 years, we've been along this path of renewal. Now, what essentially it means for a parish culture, for a parish to be renewed, means that its culture must be renewed. Every parish has a culture, and that culture, jumping ahead, the culture is always the underlying reality that we actually celebrate, that we actually value. Culture equals what we celebrate and what we value. We celebrate birthdays, right? We celebrate it because it's important and we value it, and we have a way in which we celebrate it. But when it comes to parish culture, there are many, many things about it which we may not even be aware of. I'm going to pick a simple example which I've shared with you before, but I'm going to mention it again just to help instill the point. The place where we sit at Mass, right? We tend to sit, most of us, in the same seats every time. I sit in my seat every time, right? And now we come to our seat and someone else is there. And we think, how dare you sit in my seat? You know, it's not your seat, this is my seat, even though we know it's not our seat. But that's part of our culture. And in fact, most parishes would have this as part of their culture. We get used to people sitting in the same seats. And look around now, not just yourself, look around, and do people more or less seem to be seated in exactly the same seat? Except thank you for those who moved a bit for the homily, thank you for that. But I recently met a couple who, from a larger parish in our diocese, and they said to me, we deliberately go to different masses in our parish. Why? To see different congregations. And then within those congregations, we actually deliberately sit in different parts of the church so that we can actually meet a different circle of people around us and in time get to know them. Very interesting move, and it's the couple who's very much tuned into getting to know the members of their parish. So culture is what we value, it's what we celebrate. Next. Hopefully it'll work. Great. Can you see that? Iceberg. I've used this image before. I'm going to keep mentioning it. Now, that iceberg, I don't know exactly how high it is, but because when there's nothing else to compare it with, it actually looks, well, any size really that you wanted. But my guess is that it's probably a few hundred feet high. When I was still working in the US, I went on an excursion in Resurrection Bay in Alaska. Anyway, we saw this glacier. So that's an iceberg. This was a glacier. And the ship was not closer than a quarter of a mile. So somewhere between 400, 600 meters away. 400 meters is about a quarter of a mile. When you looked at it, you think, oh, yeah, it's whatever. It's 50, 100 feet high. That glacier, so it was coming in and it was growing. It was falling into the sea at a rate of 10 feet per day. They told us it was actually 500 feet high and growing. Just to give you an idea, that's about 1.25 times the height of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Right? So, now, with an iceberg, come back to here, the iceberg, only 1/9 is above the water. 8/9 are below the water. So imagine if that's 100 or 200 feet high. How much more ice there is still beneath it. And that's what culture is like. That's what parish culture is like. There are certain things that reveal themselves to us very readily. But there are also other things which are hidden, and we only realize them when we either go to change them, or when we don't respect them, or when we don't, somehow we violate them, and we will experience a reaction, a resistance. As Father James says in his book, just try and change a mass time, and you'll see something about parish culture. You'll get the comments, right? But anyway, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change our parish culture. This last year, in July, some of you, many of you actually, participated in a survey that we did called the ME25 survey. And ME stands for Membership Engagement. This was done by Gallup. You've heard of Gallup, probably. Gallup polls, politics and all of that. Well, Gallup has a section of it that actually works on, it's called Gallup Faith. So it works with parishes and how to help them grow strong. What is it about people that makes them feel a part of the parish? And what doesn't? So they go into all of these things. And you were asked to look at and to respond to 25 different statements. They weren't all questions, some of them were, but mostly they were statements. And the statements were testing people's engagement, they were testing people's belonging, they were testing a whole lot of things, okay? And so ultimately what Gallup says in their research, and they've been doing this since the 70s, is that parishes flourish when members are engaged. When parishes don't flourish, it's because members do not feel engaged. It's simple as that. It's not so much because they've just stopped being spiritual, they've just lost the faith, they've all sorts of other things. That was actually the common wisdom in the 70s, while people are just losing faith. And for some perhaps they were. But it was actually, they stopped feeling engaged. So the Membership Engagement 25 survey was testing the engagement of members in our parish. You're probably wondering, how did we do? Is anyone curious? Yeah, okay, I'll tell you in a minute. So 12 statements were about engagement, and 13 statements were about spiritual commitment and outcomes. Overall, this is Catholic, this is not our parish. This is Catholics overall. And by the way, a lot of the results were shaped by North American parishes. When we did it at that time, so this is July of last year, we were the first parish in Australia to be doing this survey. First parish. I was surprised to hear that, but anyway, we were. And they didn't have any records. So this is basically, when a parish is starting out, this is what you tend to get. And some people might be wondering, why on earth am I talking about these statistics and that sort of stuff when we're really on our journey to Advent? Because if we're not willing to look at this, we can talk about Jesus all we like, but we're not willing to face the deeper issues that are going on inside of us, there'll be blockages to meeting Jesus Christ. So that's why we've got to do this, and we need to do this. Catholic overall would have about 30% engaged. And the idea, of course, is to have as many people in the parish as possible in the engaged category. Look at that. Only 30% engaged. That's a standard parish. The not engaged is the middle category. 47%. Is that clear enough for the people at the back? Is that big enough? Okay, I don't need to read out the figures so much. And then there's a third category, 23% actively disengaged. Now you might wonder, what on earth does it mean to have engaged, not engaged, actively disengaged? Someone who is engaged means that they have a psychological connection, a bond, an emotional bond with the parish. They feel they can go to Mass in other places, but they want to come to our parish because they feel a bond here. That's what that means, engaged. The non-engaged category means that These are, and you can see it's the largest category. This is a standard parish. The largest category. They come to Mass, there's openness there, but they're not really so engaged. They could go elsewhere for Mass. It doesn't really make that much difference if it wasn't in this parish. But there's an openness there. There's an openness. And the openness, by the way, can go in either one of two directions. Forward to the engaged, or backwards to the actively disengaged. And this has happened in many parishes, right? Someone just comes to Mass, but nothing's happening. They're not being engaged. So they slide to active disengagement, and then from that, after a while, they will just stop practicing their faith. Or perhaps keep going, but I'm going to talk about the active disengagement mentality. So the non-engaged is that middle category that in many parishes have to be won over. And then actively disengaged, what does that mean? That means those who are coming to Mass, and even some who are not coming to Mass. So someone who might come to Mass twice a year, Easter and Christmas, for example. That's an actively disengaged parishioner. Actively disengaged. So it's not that important for them to be part of it. They might nominally identify with being a Catholic, but they're really not engaged. But it can also mean others who are coming to Mass, because we didn't actually survey those in the streets and byways and Port Kembla and Primby and Weedon, right? We surveyed only those, and this is totally anonymous, by the way. Actively disengaged also means those who are coming to Mass every Sunday, but who have a real resistance to what is going on in the parish. So you might ask the question, why on earth do they keep coming to Mass? I have no idea. But there's a resistance to what is being offered. And they're disagreeing for some reason or other. So it might be a simple reason that, I've got to keep coming to Mass because I know it'll be a mortal sin. If I don't go to Mass, I don't want to go to hell, and that's it. And at the end of the day, I think, wow, imagine if I go to Christ in my judgment and I say, he says, oh Mark, so what have you done? Why should you go to heaven? Oh, this is not going to be a conversation, it'll just reveal judgment to me, that'll be it. But it'll be, I'll say, oh well, actually, I went to church, But he said, yeah, but you weren't open to anything I had to say. You were resistant to so much of my grace. I was pouring torrents of grace over you, and there was this resistance. Where's the surrender that I was asking of you all throughout your life? Because this is what engagement ultimately means. And we're surrendering to Jesus Christ. So that's the actively disengaged. 30% engaged in the Catholic parish overall, 47% not engaged, and 23% actively disengaged. Now, are you ready for our results? This is St. Patrick's overall. Look at the percentage of engaged that we have in our parish. 46%. That's huge. That's 150% of what you'd normally get in a Catholic parish. That is excellent. Well done, folks. Give yourself a pat on the back. You go back on 20 Bird there. So now, but remember, it's 46% that's engaged. It's not 100%. So we've still got some work to do, right? In fact, a lot of work. 37% is not engaged. So they're in that middle category that I explained earlier. And then, of course, only 17% actively disengaged. The other percentage was 23, you might recall, actively disengaged. And in our parish, only 17. So the idea is to increase the first category as much as possible, and then to minimize the actively disengaged as much as possible. Father James Mellon, in his book Divine Renovation, From Maintenance to Mission, he talks about how in his parish they did it every 15 months. In our parish we're taking a bit longer, and that's fair enough. There's no particular formula that you've got to follow. It's just that we will do it, whether it's every year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, in order to measure our results, to see how we are going. But one of the things that Gallup says in the whole thing is, for every one person who is actively disengaged, the toxicity value requires 4 people in the parish who are engaged to neutralize it. Because you see, negativity spreads. Negativity spreads. And so you need a lot of positive people, who 4 times in fact as many, in order to counteract that. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? So it's in our interest as a parish, if we want to grow and keep moving towards the Lord and get more people engaged, to get into that category. So well done, folks. You can pat yourselves on the back on that, and that's great. Now, when the survey was done, Gallup identifies 4 basic questions. 4 questions that each of us subconsciously asks him or herself. The first one is, what do I get? I'm going to rattle them off and then I'll go through each one. What do I get? What does it cost me? What does it cost? Thirdly, do I belong? And fourthly, how can we grow? What do I get? What does it cost? Do I belong? And how can we grow? What do I get? When I was studying homiletics in the seminary, our teacher, Father Clem Hill, great teacher and great liturgist, he got us to read a book by Alan Pease. Alan Pease was in the 80s and the 90s. He was famous for the body language books that he wrote, but he also wrote a book called Right Language. Right Language. Write, not R-I-T-H-T. And he said, when you are giving a homily, you are tuning into another radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That's the message. When we sit down, in other words, why would anyone want to be a part of this parish? Ask themselves, what's in it for me? What do I get? What's going to come my way? Why should I be here or another parish? Or any parish at all? Just stay at home on Sunday morning, go to the gym, whatever. Why should I come? What's in it for me? What do I get? The next question we subconsciously ask is, what does it cost? I'm starting from the bottom up, by the way, because this is actually a pyramid. If the first question is not addressed, then we can't build on top of that, and so forth. That's why we're starting from the bottom. I couldn't get a picture of a pyramid, but anyway, maybe next week I'll do better. So what does it cost? It reminds me of the story between Adam and God. And he's in the Garden of Eden, and Eve has not yet been created. So he's there, and God's walking in the cool of the evening one day, and he sees Adam sulking. And he says, Adam, what's wrong? You're not happy, you're sulking. There's something wrong with the garden, you don't like the animals, the fruit trees aren't good enough. He says, no, God, I love the animals, I love the fruit trees, everything is just so beautiful, but I'm just lonely. There's no one else here like me. He says, well, I can make you a helpmate, and she'll love you, she'll be beautiful, she'll look after you, she'll cook for you, she'll even clean up after your mess. And Adam says, what's it going to cost? And God says, an arm and a leg. And he says, well, see what you can do with a rib. Of course, anyway. But that's the reality. We ask, what's it going to cost me? Right? What's it going to cost? What's it going to cost? What's required of me? This is why, can you see principle number 6 of divine renovation there? Anyone who can see behind you in that? What's principle number 6? Clear expectations. That as a parish, we need to have expectations from our parishioners. This is what we expect of you. And a parish that doesn't have clear expectations, it's like participating in a game and we don't know the rules. What's expected of me? Well, I'm going to play some cricket, but I come in with the rules of touch football. Or I'm going to play, invited to play a game of pool, but I come in with the knowledge of basketball. It doesn't work. See, if we don't know what's expected of us, how can we actually behave in that way properly? It doesn't work. So we ask ourselves, what does it cost? Thirdly, do I belong? Do I belong? You see, if what I get or what I'm promised sounds good, I'm going to buy in. And if the cost is affordable, I'm going to go in the next step, aren't I? But then something needs to happen to make me feel like I belong. I am part of this community. I love this community. I will go and back. I want to work. I want to play with this team. I want to play with the team. So that's a very important underlying question. And then lastly, how do we grow? Because if I'm with this team and we're running towards a goal, and what's our goal? Who is our goal? Jesus. Jesus Christ is our goal. Jesus Christ. And if you want a nutshell, what our parish vision is about, it's in the parish prayer. We pray every Sunday. Come, Holy Spirit, set us ablaze with faith, hope, and love. So what? So that we might become a thriving Christian community where everyone is welcome. Lead us to be joy-filled missionary disciples, because no one wants to join an unhappy, grumpy bunch of people. But joy-filled missionary disciples is magnetic, right? Lead us to be joyful missionary disciples, fed by the Eucharist, growing in holiness, and taking the gospel to the people of our parish. This is how we grow, right? We need to know, and this will happen in different ways, but clear expectations are so important for us, how we grow, or the costs, and then being, of course, belonging. The questions that we hashed out in the Pastoral Council meeting recently fall under the banner of these two. What does it cost? And do I belong? Gallup tells us to choose a strength that we have based on our results, and then to choose a struggle, so that we're not overwhelmed by a struggle. We think, oh no, we haven't done so well in this area, and then we get down about that. But neither just choosing a strength alone, well, we've already done that. We actually don't have much more to go in terms of progress. So they say choose one of each, so that we can continue to consolidate our strengths and to then work on our struggle. And what strength and what struggle did we choose? Well, the strength is this. That statement, some of you might remember answering it, but don't worry. Can the people at the back see or read it all right? Okay. So in the last month, I have received recognition or praise from someone in my congregation or parish. You all did very well on that. That's great, because someone is caring, someone's reaching out to you, someone has acknowledged what you have done, that you are valuable. See, it's like when we have expectations of someone in our parish, then it means we know people are capable of giving. And I'm not talking here about financial giving. That's an outcome. But if we're working on the engagement, the outcomes will come by themselves. Do you know that a parish, by the way, it's a bit of an aside, a parish that has a high percentage of engaged people are 3 times likely to be happier than a parish of disengaged people? 3 times life satisfaction in general. 3 times, giving 3 times as much, because they see this is worth giving to, right? And it's about 13.5 times likely to invite someone to join our parish. So there's a lot on this, holding on this. So that's our strength. What's our struggle? As a member of my congregational parish, my opinions seem to count. Now, don't think we did badly on this. Overall, we did exceptionally well as a parish, but we had to choose a struggle, right? So on this area, we actually did medium. but it's still an area. It was below, I think it was below, wasn't it, Sue? Or on par. It was on average with what most other parishes are. So that's how good, right? And I want to keep telling you this because this is worth it. It's worth the effort. But it was compared to our standards, this was a weaker area. So what that means in practice is, and I'm going to unfold this in the next couple of weeks, is that we did okay, but we can improve. It means there's a good number of people who feel that their opinions actually count. Right? And we'll unpack this. But there are still others for whom maybe not. So, that's the plan for our Advent reflections. Next week, we'll explore our strength, what it means. Because unless we're prepared to drill deeply into these things, the culture will not change. Remember the iceberg. Remember the iceberg. That's how far down we've got to go in order to allow a real change. And then, of course, the third Sunday, we'll explore our struggle. Incidentally, it'll be Rejoicing Sunday, because when we overcome our struggles, we end up rejoicing. Amen. Blessed Advent.